lithium, nickel, and cobalt, they control the future. The EV revolution will be controlled by Tesla. I think it's going to be to the benefit of everyone.
I think for the industry too, there's really two parts to it, right? So for electric vehicles, unlike ICE cars, that the real driver of power is the engine, electric vehicles do have motors, but that's not really the supply constraint. It's the batteries that store the energy for them. So Legacy Auto really has to come at this from two different directions. They've got to figure out their supply chain and their supply line on batteries just so they can ship the cars, but also over the next coming 5 years, autonomy is going to continue to progress for Tesla as well, which is going to further push them into, they're going to have to solve both the battery problem and continue to improve the autonomy problem if they're going to make their products competitive. So I really think battery is obviously the first piece of the puzzle, but then working rapidly on autonomy and software as a service is going to be a huge part of the second.
He stole mine right at the end there. I was going to say banking on Eli's. I was going to talk a little bit about the software, even though that wasn't part of the question. But I think Tesla has proven that, it's not just the battery constraints that are the issues for the OEMs. They just don't have the software strength to be able to continually improve range and efficiency like Tesla is, on a regular basis. So range improvements, again, just recently, and more to come in the near future. So I think that the software side of the battery industry is critical to the future.
Go ahead, Brooks.
Yeah, I would agree with the battery technology. I think a lot of people that I talk to about electric cars are always hitting that hurdle of, traveling and charging and that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot of other electric cars out there, and you can see that they haven't had the success that Tesla has. And that's because, you can travel the country, you can charge. But with all the cars coming out, and Tesla's making them and bringing out a ton of cars, I think the supercharger network's got to expand. We can't be waiting in lines. And so charging faster, quicker, and just more infrastructure across the country is going to be the key, and that's why Tesla's been so far ahead of everybody else.
Real quick, by a show of hands, how many people here are currently driving or at least have one electric vehicle in their household? All right, just about everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would have to agree with everybody on the panel. Tesla, if you look at them, they set the bar so high that, the rest of the OEMs are coming on board. And if you look at the rest of the cars in the market, in a lot of ways, they're either compliance cars or they're a little dissatisfying in a lot of ways. Elon goes on Twitter sometimes or even on interviews and says, well, they got to keep selling these other cars and stuff because, they just don't have the battery tech. They don't have, they all laughed at Tesla for many years, and now here they are. They're forced to be reckoned with. Stock price aside. But I think the OEMs really have to own the battery tech as much as what they own in terms of the ICE, the engine itself. Because if you look at the way the manufacturers, the only thing they keep in-house is body building, final assembly, and engine design and building. That's all they do. Everything else is literally outsourced. And Tesla is a very, very integrated, vertically oriented company in a lot of ways. So unless they actually develop and build their own cells, much like what Tesla's about to do, they're going to be at a cost disadvantage. So the flip side of that, of course, is there are going to be a lot of compromisers of those cars. They're going to have less range, not as much performance. They're going to cut corners in order to compete in a lot of ways. So there's no doubt in my mind that those cars won't improve over time, but Tesla has such a lead on a lot of ways that it's I don't know what to say. It's just one of those things, I think the other manufacturers are going to come up, but it's going to take longer than I think a lot of people anticipate. In a lot of ways too, they also have an uphill battle because you got the whole dealership network situation, which is in a lot of ways very hostile to selling electric vehicles because their business model is, well, we make the money on the service side of stuff, not on the front end. And Tesla was actually smart in a lot of ways to say, look, we're not going to go down the dealership route. We can't do franchises because, it's counterproductive of what we want to do. And the moment they go down the franchise, that's a slippery slope. I think that's why Tesla's fighting so hard to not do the franchise thing, because the moment you do that, you can't put the genie back in the bottle,
We have 5 agreements. That's not good, guys. Come on. But actually, I agree as well. I want to change up the question a little bit, really picking up on the very end of what Trevor said. Tesla lead keeps expanding, actually, despite some things you hear. I think that's really the case. So I want to go back to an old meme and bring it forward into the future. The old meme is, gosh, what if somebody acquired Tesla Motors? What if that somebody was a legacy auto company or maybe a newer tech company? So let's look into the future. 5 years again seems like a good spectrum. The lead keeps expanding, and somebody is going to say to themselves, despite the stock price, maybe Tesla's worth an acquisition. Or flipping things around, maybe Tesla, given their current stock price and valuation, may acquire a legacy maker. But let's focus on the first part. Guys, if they were acquired, is that a good thing or a bad thing? What would it mean? That's kind of a crazy question, but it's relevant. Trev, we'll start with you and work down the other way. Sorry to put pressure on you.
Personally, I don't think that Tesla's going to be acquired. They're too big. They're too far gone now. I mean, there was a time, actually, there were several cases where Tesla almost went bankrupt. 2008 during the financial crisis, and around 2013, early part of 2013, Elon had said that, he had talked to the guys at Google about a possible acquisition. The bottom line here is Tesla's intellectual property, their factories, their know-how, their engineering, their patent portfolio is just, it's, even if they were to be acquired, let's say things really went south for whatever reason, that's worth something. How many people have seen the video by Chamath Palihapitiya? Okay, I got it on my YouTube channel if you look at it. This guy, man, he's got his head on his shoulders. And he really makes a point, that property is so valuable, any auto manufacturer would pony up the money to buy them because it's so valuable. I think the onus really is the other manufacturers have to pay attention to what Tesla's actually doing because they're so disruptive in many different ways. So, if anybody was to acquire them, well, obviously they have to have very deep pockets. And if you look at the market as far as what's a good fit, a lot of people like to throw around Apple, cost of doing business, right? And they move on. But if you look at the way Tesla operates, a lot of the stuff is pulled out of straight Apple's playbook in a lot of ways, right? So there's a lot of fitment there. But, would Apple really want to have a car business? I don't know.
I think over the past decade since Tesla started, I think there was a number of opportunities where even Elon would have been open to acquisition because he was afraid of the future of the company. But now, after 2 quarters of profitability, major buy-ins over the past months by large institutional investors, I can't imagine anybody could offer enough money now for these guys to give up their share, because it's now very clear that Tesla not only can be profitable, but they are profitable. And they're growing in a world when the rest of the manufacturers have, marginal growth and aren't even jumping on the EV wagon. In fact, like the Q4 earnings report from Ford, even more shows how important electric is. Like Ford lost a ton of money. Their CEO just left. Like Tesla is leading the future in both electric vehicles and autonomy and batteries and neural processing chips to handle autopilot. There's so many technology pieces that they're in the lead on that, although their market cap is 160 billion, if Tesla's going to seriously consider an acquisition, it's probably going to be $500 billion or plus that nobody can afford. And at this point, I don't see Elon walking away from it, because for you guys who follow Elon Musk, all of this for him is, he wants to help improve Earth with Tesla, but this is really a cash machine to help put humans on Mars. So I don't see any way that he walks away from this thing now.
I agree. I think if this was going to happen, it was going to happen years ago. And maybe if it did happen years ago, it would have been something could have been positive for Tesla and for whatever OEM or company it was, that acquired them. But at this point, I think that there's a few automotive CEOs that are kind of coming around. They're starting to get on Twitter and tweet and support Elon and finally realize that Tesla has done this and now they're behind and they need to work harder. But there's still a lot of automakers that I think don't have a lot of faith in Tesla and think that it might even be, of course, not only cost prohibitive, but also a detriment to take them on as even though they have had 2 profitable quarters, they haven't been profitable in the past, and there's all kinds of negativity out there still about how they handle things and how they run things, and I don't know if there's any major automaker that would want to adopt that. But like Trevor had said, someone like Apple makes more sense, but I think that's beyond us now. I think if Apple was going to acquire Tesla, that needed to happen 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, for sure.
And Apple's play too, from what I understand from my information on Apple, is that they decided to go with a pure tech play, meaning Apple doesn't want to be in the automotive business. They're developing an autonomy solution that is going to be something that they want to license and sell to auto manufacturers. Apple, from my understanding, wants to stay in the pure tech business and not own the difficulty of manufacturing cars. There's some great comparisons that I've seen that actually building rockets is far easier than manufacturing cars. And I think Apple realized that and they didn't want to get into that game. But then the other part of the question that was posed too is, can legacy auto manufacturers, why they don't want to jump into this because of profitability? And it's a real concern, right? So would Tesla acquire a legacy auto manufacturer? And my thought on this is actually no, because these guys have billions of dollars in assets in manufacturing facilities and equipment and infrastructure that a lot of it can't be repurposed for electric vehicles. There's a lot of these things that are going to have to go, and if they're going to start designing cars in the future, a lot of their tooling isn't useful. So they have a lot of dead assets, and that's part of what's slowing these guys down from making the jump. Is whenever they do, they're going to lose billions of dollars for quarter over quarter over quarter. Why they make and try and survive the transition. That's why for a lot of these guys, you kind of see the strategy be to do lip service to EVs, keep promising you a car that's going to come in 2020 that ultimately ends up being 2025, so they can play the PR game where they try and figure out how to stomach the cost required to rebuild their infrastructure.